the survey now, Major Tom, for 2024 for the embalmers and the undertakers. And now we're going to do the People's Blood Clot Survey for 2024. Now, this is a new one on me, so you'll have to take us through it, please.
Absolutely, Liz. Early last year, in March of last year, I was actually contacted by a endovascular specialist and cardiologist in Jacksonville, Florida, who works in what's called a cath lab or catheterization lab, and they remove clots from living people. And of course, up to the years 2020, it was just the grape jelly clots, the ones that look like dark grape jelly and dissolve easily in your hands, or what's called chicken fat clots, the ones that are small, yellowish in color and tear very easily. But now they've started to remove these unusual white fibrous clots out of their corpses. And these are much tougher to get out because they don't dissolve. So they have to actually go in with flexible catheters that either suck the clot out, scrape it out, or lasso it and pull the clot out. So that's the only way they can get these clots out of there, because you can't break them down. They use drugs like tissue plasminogen activator, TPA, and they do a wonderful job against traditional grape jelly clots. They have no effect on these white fibrous clots. So then, like I said, they have to go in and physically remove them. So based upon that, and Dr. Philip McMillan, also a YouTuber over there in the UK, in your own neck of the woods, he runs a YouTube channel called Vegan Health, VEJON. Philip found his own cath lab whistleblower, a gentleman who also works in the United States, and he did a 52-minute Substack interview with this guy. And you can hear his voice, but you can't see him. He's kept himself anonymous. But this gentleman has been working in the same cath lab for 20 years, and he's pulling out anywhere between 3 to 10 of these white fibrous clots out of patients per week in his lab. And unlike the embalmers, these doctors do have access to the COVID vaccination records of all their patients. So they can tell you how many shots they took, which brand they took, when they took their last shot. And he says that 99% of the time when he finds the white fibrous clots, the person's been jabbed with anywhere between 1 to 8 jabs. And the more vaccines they've taken, the worse the clotting seems to be. So I encourage your people to go on to Dr. Philip McMillan's Vegan Health Substack and watch his 52-minute Substack interview with that individual. So based upon that, I said, wow, the doctors are finding these things too in the living, which is scary. Having these clots in the dead is one thing, but finding them in the living is something else. And the embalmers and I we were not surprised whatsoever. We knew this was happening because the embalmers were picking up bodies that were only an hour or two old, and they had not been refrigerated yet, and they were finding them riddled with the clots. And they said, there's no way these clots could have formed in just the hour or two since the person passed. So they knew it was happening in the living and causing strokes and heart attacks, died suddenly. So that gave me the idea to try to run what's called a cath lab worker survey, blood clot survey. So I came up with a survey similar to the one that I did for the embalmers, but this time I sent it to the societies for vascular surgery in 5 countries around the world: the United States, Canada, UK, and Australia, New Zealand. And I asked them to please forward it to all their members to take the survey. Well, guess what, Liz? Not a single one agreed to take the survey. In fact, the only response I got was from the U.S. Society for Vascular Surgery, and they're headquartered in Rosemont, Illinois, and they brag about having over 6,300 members, vascular surgeons across the United States. They refused to take my survey. And it's a darn shame, too, because in this survey, unlike the embalmer surveys, I did add questions about the COVID vaccine since I knew they had access to the records. I wanted to see if, hey, are the people you're finding these clots in, are they the ones that have been taking the shots? And like that whistleblower for Dr. McMillan and admitted. But I got zero responses from any of these societies. And I also sent the survey separately to about 200 vascular surgeons in my country, in the United States. Got zero responses from them. The doctors do not want to talk about this. So I said, well, if I can't get good information from the doctor end, maybe I can get good information from the patient end. So I developed a survey called the 2024 People's Blood Clot Survey, which Dr. John Campbell there in the UK, YouTuber, John was courteous and he displayed a QR code for me so people could take the survey. So did another gentleman over here in the States, Clayton Morris, who runs a real nice YouTube channel. Redacted News with his wife, Natalie. So Clayton and John displayed my QR code. And guess what, Liz? In just 2 weeks, I got over 1,400 responses from people all over the world about their blood clotting problems since January of 2020. I put January 2020 because I wanted to know what kind of blood clotting issues there were in the first year that we had COVID, but no vaccines yet. And then subsequently, from 2021 onward, when we had both the virus and the vaccine. So let me run through some of the results of that survey. First of all, we got responses from all over, Norway, Germany, Belgium, Sweden, Finland, Spain, Portugal, France, the Netherlands, Switzerland, Italy, Greece, Ireland, Iceland, Poland, Hungary, Romania, Serbia, the Czech Republic, Turkey, Morocco, South Africa, Brazil, Ecuador, Peru, South Korea, Hong Kong, India, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, Mexico, Bermuda, Guatemala, North Macedonia, the Faroe Islands, Mumbai, Indonesia, Israel, Barbados, and the U.S. Virgin Islands, just to name some. So we got responses from all over. And what was interesting is one of the first questions we asked them was, what years, mark all that apply, that you or the person that you know had blood clotting issues. And of the over 1,400 that responded, 79 of them said that they had their blood clotting issue in the year 2020. Then going forward, from 2021 going forward, in 2021, it was 524. It jumped from 79 in 2020 to 524 people having blood clotting problems in 2021. What's that tell you, Liz? It's telling me that it's not a COVID virus problem. It's telling me it's a COVID vaccine problem. In 2022, the number was 562. In 2023, it was 560. And in 2024, it was 491. So people that had the blood clotting issues, it spanned over years, but it really took off starting in 2021, not in 2020, which is very interesting. The next question I asked them is just flat out, did the person with the clots take the COVID-19 vaccine? Of the 1,425 that responded, 45 said they didn't know because they were answering for somebody else. They didn't know whether that person had taken the vaccine or not. But 1,294, almost 1,300 of the 1,400 said, yes, the person's taken the vaccine. Only 82 said no, the person had not taken the vaccine. The next question I asked is, what years, mark all that apply, did the person with the clots take the COVID-19 vaccine? And this was interesting. I put December of 2020 on there. Here in the States, the shots came out right at the very end of 2020. 196 said the person took the shot in December of 2020. Then in 2021, it was 1,092, which was the longest bar. That makes sense, right? Most people took their first jabs in 2021 when the vaccines rolled out. They took if they took like the Pfizer and Moderna, they took 2 jabs. They took one, then they took another one about a month later. But then starting in 2022, the number went down to 565. In 2023, it went down to 221 people taking the shot. And then in 2024, down to 74. So this dovetails perfectly what the CDC's been reporting, that people, by and large, took the first couple shots, but then you start to see this great tapering off as people, they say, hey, wait a minute, I'm taking these shots. I'm still catching COVID anyways and transmitting it. And they're starting to hear about all these nasty side effects by that time too. Myocarditis, nerve damage, miscarriages, turbo cancers, and of course, these white fibrous clots that we've been talking about. So the next question I asked is, how soon did the person develop the blood clotting issue after taking the COVID-19 vaccine? And I got all kinds of answers for this. It was interesting. 125 people said less than 2 weeks. Another 118 said between 2 weeks and a month. 320 people said they got their the blood clotting issue between 1 to 6 months after the shot. 217 said between 6 months and a year. And then 367 said greater than 1 year. So it's telling me, I have a theory that it may take 6 to 18 months, maybe even more, maybe a couple of years or more, for these white fibrous clots to grow to the size where they actually, do eventually give you a stroke or heart attack. So that kind of corroborates that theory, is that you can take the shot as many as several years ago, but then still feel the effects way later on. You may feel fine for, a few years, but then it gets to you. Yeah, Liz.
Well, if you think back to the wonderful Professor Dolores Cahill from Ireland, when she first started talking about this after COVID and when the first shots were, she reckoned the peak would come somewhere around 5 years after taking the shots. She said it won't appear straight away. She said, but it'll continue, and the problems you will have will magnify over 5 years, and that in 5 years' time you're really going to have a peak. So she's not far wrong, I don't think. These things
Yeah,
will grow.
I agree with you, and I agree with her assessment, and I think that's also shared by Dr. McMillan. People like Gert Vanden Bosch believe that this is, there's going to be a big autoimmunity problem associated with this and all these side effects we're talking about. So the next question we asked is the blood clotting issue was in what part of the body? We wanted to know where they were seeing the blood clotting issue. And the number one answer is legs, what's called deep vein thrombosis, is DVTs in the legs. Number two was the lungs, which is scary, Liz, because that's in the area what's called a pulmonary embolism, a PE, and those could be fatal. Number three answer was the brain. 314 people said brain. Number four area was the heart, then abdomen, and then we had kind of a catch-all for eyes, nose, arms, uterus, etc. And what was interesting about this, Liz, is this matched perfectly information coming out of the CDC's own systems. The CDC has, as you know, two systems for reporting adverse events. One's called VAERS, the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, but a lesser-known one is called vSafe. And vSafe was a downloadable app that people could download on their smartphones to talk about their vaccine experience. And 10 million Americans actually downloaded that app. Would you believe of the 10 million people that downloaded it, 800,000 of them, 8%, said they had a severe event that was bad enough that they either had to go to the emergency room, to urgent care, or schedule a doctor's appointment to take care of that adverse event. Now, of those 800,000, only 30,000 of those people actually filed a corresponding VAERS report. All 800,000 of them should have filed a corresponding VAERS report, but only, like I said, about 30,000 of them did. That means that VAERS has an underreporting factor of about 26. It means that the thousands and thousands of deaths and other injuries you see in VAERS are actually off by a factor of 26. The actual number you should take all those numbers, multiply them by 26 to get the actual number of injuries and deaths caused by the vaccine. So that's scary. But what was interesting is Dill Bigtree runs the High Wire show, and he also has a organization called ICANN, Informed Consent Action Network, and they FOIA'd the CDC to get the free text fields from the vSafe database. The CDC did not want to turn it over, but a judge made them do it. They said, oh yeah, you're going to turn this information over. And so the CDC's been doing it in these tranches of about hundreds of thousands of records in forms of an Excel spreadsheet. And I've been going through every month and looking at their submissions in Excel, and I do a search on the term blood clot. And whenever I come across it, I see where the blood clot occurred in that free text data field in vSafe. So I write it down, and sure enough, according to the CDC's own data out of vSafe, legs is the number one answer, followed by lungs, followed by brain, followed by heart. It's exactly the same as these 1,400 people that responded to this survey, which gives me great confidence that people are not lying on this survey. They're telling the truth. They're being accurate because they're matching the information exactly out of the CDC's very own vSafe and VAERS systems. So the next question I asked him is, how was the blood clotting issue resolved? 383 of the people, Liz, have not had the problem resolved. They still have the blood clotting issue. That's kind of scary. On the good side, 98 people said that it went away on its own. Another 416 of the 1,400 said they were able to dissolve the clot using clot-busting drugs, meaning it was probably one of the grape jelly clots, which is good. But there were 257 people that said that they had to have the clot surgically removed, physically removed, which probably those were all white fibrous clots. Like I said, they don't respond well to tissue plasminogen activator, so then they tend to grow and persist and have to be removed physically. And unfortunately, 242 of the people said that the person died. So they unfortunately couldn't get to him to remove the clot before it killed them. One of the last questions we asked is, if the person's clot was physically removed by a doctor, would you be willing to share that doctor's name? Liz, out of the 1,400 people that responded, only 142 said yes, which means it tells me that the people, they don't want to get their doctor in trouble. maybe they want to continue to go to that doctor, and they, but they don't want to get their doctor. It's a shame, isn't it? It's a shame. So that was the last question we had in the survey. Again, at the end of the survey, we offered up an optional comments block so people could tell us about their particular situation. So let me read a few of these. And these are kind of, of the 1,400 people that responded, Liz, over 1,100 of them actually utilized the comments box and gave me a comment. So I'm going to read just a couple of the selected ones. Here's the first one. My mother had 3 COVID vaccines, all Pfizer vaccines. She was healthy, but then had a stroke and coded in the hospital and died within 5 days. The funeral director was a good friend of the family's and informed us and showed us the white fibrous clots that were throughout her body. He told us they were seeing a lot of these types of clots while embalming. Here's another one. This is one from a late surgical nurse inside the system, Liz. Surgical nurse seeing a huge increase in clots. We're doing more amputations than I've seen in my whole career. I'm definitely seeing the clots you're describing. When I say it's probably due to the COVID shot, everyone ignores me and there's silence in the operating room. I also hear the surgeons saying, I've never seen anything like this before. Also, during heart surgeries, the surgeons are just having a difficult time suturing as the tissues are just falling apart. Once again, the surgeons are saying, I've never seen anything like this before. A lot of patients are dying. Here's maybe the most disturbing one. I was feeling fine, then had pain left side below shoulder blade. Started sweating and feeling weak. Called the ambulance. ECG did not show heart attack. Rushed to emergency. ECG did not show heart attack. Third different emergency. Doctor did ECG and an ultrasound. They were all perplexed. A cardiologist was called. I went to a heart institute. Arriving there, I went into cardiac arrest. Was out 2 minutes. 3 sets of compressions and 4 defibrillator shocks were used. They went in through an artery at the wrist. They removed fibrous clot. They did not want to tell me, but a nurse whispered to me, it's the vaccine. We have so many. Follow-up appointment with the cardiologist. I asked the question directly. The doctor looked down and said, I cannot talk about it at the risk of losing my job. What do you think about that, Liz?
Well, it plays out. I was just about to say to you, somebody that I know very well who's an oncologist, I can't remember, it's his brother-in-law or his son-in-law, is an eminent cardiologist, and they have never seen so many heart attacks and heart problems. It said it's an epidemic. And I haven't queried the white fibrous clots with this particular person, but I'm hoping, having talked to you today, that I will manage to get a word with him and say off the cuff, because he would talk to me off the cuff because they trust me, and to see, quite what's going on. What I can't understand is if they're all seeing it, why do they not all band together and say, here, all of us? They can't possibly strike off every cardiologist in America or the UK. They can't strike off every pathologist, or they can't strike off every coroner, and they all know what's going on. So who is putting the gun to their heads?
I think to a large extent, it's themselves. I'm sure you've read the book 1984. Winston Smith, how he hates Big Brother, right? And he writes in his diary how much he hates Big Brother secretly, right? He can't tell them. But I'm sure a lot of other people in that society hate Big Brother as well. But everybody's afraid to come out and talk about it. And it's even hard to try to come to a group together and decide as a group to talk about it, because the first person that talks about it, you don't know if that person's an ally or an enemy. They could turn you in, right? And then Big Brother stuff. That's what's happening, Liz. These doctors are all beholden. And a lot of them, remember, they took the shots themselves. They may not want to know the answers to the questions and anything bad about the shots. They probably recommended them to their families and, patients. So they feel a certain amount of guilt about it. So they're okay with covering up the fact that it's still causing lots of death and injury to people. But it's immoral, isn't it? It's unethical.
Absolutely, because the first duty, or the first thing that they swear an oath on, is, do no harm. Well, something is causing harm, So why is somebody not doing something about it? Why aren't the medical profession banding together and said, we've never seen this before. What is causing it?
That's why it was so important for the regime in all the countries to slap down doctors like Dr. Peter McCullough, Dr. Pierre Corey, Dr. Paul Mary, Dr. Ryan Cole, when they all first came out and started talking as individuals about, hey, we think there's a problem with the vaccines, we think they're causing this, they were slapped down and slapped down hard. Their licenses were threatened. That they actually, some of them had them taken away, their board certifications taken away, and they made examples out of those people, not so much for themselves, but also to warn all the other doctors, don't you dare come out and say anything bad about the vaccines, or we'll do this to you too. So that's what's going on.
And also, when you look at how much money that all these doctors make from the pharmaceutical companies, and to me, that's immoral. It doesn't even go anywhere near covering what is going on, does it?
No, you're absolutely right. They've captured the doctors with both carrots and sticks. Here in America, for example, Blue Anthem, Blue Cross Blue Shield, a doctor gets paid $250 for every vaccine that he gives. So he's incentivized to give as many shots as he can. If he's got 100 patients, he gives each of them 2 shots. That's $50,000 extra in his pocket for just 100 patients, COVID shots. So not a good situation.
No, not at all. Major Tom, thank you for that, because that really is a major breakthrough, if I may put it that way, rather than even the embalmers, because this is, if you like, straight from the horse's mouth, from the people that have actually taken the shots or their loved ones. So I think that's absolutely incredible. Thank you for doing that. Again, would you be able to send that over to me? And so we'll manage to put that up. Now,
let me read one more to you, by the way, before we go. This is from a gentleman in your own country. He's in the UK. He says, June, my wife of 43 years, submitted herself to the COVID vaccine following the advice of government/medics and my insistence. June was an award-winning career surgical registered nurse, and she died age 66 years. This occurred very suddenly in front of me while June was on the phone to a friend. June collapsed at the kitchen table. I administered CPR. I'm a retired police officer. June began to breathe again, but then stopped. Paramedics arrived, administered adrenaline and defibrillator, but June was pronounced deceased around 6:45 on Wednesday, the 8th of December of 2021. The event occurred 14 days after her latest COVID shot, which was the Moderna vaccine. A PM was post-mortem was conducted, and thrombosis, myocardial infarction, and heart failure were listed as the cause of death. However, there was no mention of the COVID vaccine. So can you imagine the guilt this gentleman, he actually wanted his wife to get the shot and then saw her die in front of him, and it was because of the shot. So, people are suffering, Liz. People in your country, my country, all over the world have lost loved ones due to these shots, and it's just catastrophic.
Major Tom, in the past, when vaccines were rolled out, if I think it was 25 people worldwide had died, they pulled the vaccine. I think it was 25. They pulled the vaccine. 25 worldwide. We've got millions.
I know. Even in Pfizer's own report, they reported over 1,200 deaths within the first 90 days after the rollout of their vaccine in their own report, yet they were not pulled. It's just bizarre. It's criminal, Liz.
It's more than criminal. There should be a number of people. We need to re-engage with things like the Nuremberg trials and put these people on trial. I'm afraid. It really is that serious. It's absolutely horrible. And when you think of the bravery, if you like, of the doctors you've been talking about, and our own embalmers and undertakers, including, of course, the wonderful Brenton Faithful in New Zealand, who we haven't mentioned today. There's some wonderful ones in Canada, in your place. The irreplaceable John O'Looney over here. What we do without John, I've got no idea. It's so brave to come out, and everybody says behind their hand like this, well, we agree with you, but we can't say anything. I mean, what has happened to people? You know,
Yeah.
you talk about transgenderism. I think they've lost part of their anatomy that we can't really talk about and say over the, because I'm a lady and you're a gentleman, but you know what I'm saying. They need to grow. Seriously. I'll say a backbone and we'll leave it like that.
Amen, Liz. People need
awful.
to be follow their Christian teachings. They need to get courage, because if you believe in God, you should be fearless about the truth, and you should be able to speak out the truth and stand up to tyranny, stand up to evil, and confront it. Amen.
You're right. Major Tom, thank you for that. Right, we're going to go on to part 3 very shortly. Thank you very much.